welcome to this week's Brownbag session. Today, we welcome the Slovenian engineer, hydrologist, and ecologist Andrej Sovinc. He is working as a protected areas and natural resource management consultant, and he is specialized in the planning, managing, and evaluation of protected areas. Andrej will talk about the reactivation of salt pans in the Slovenian Ramsar site of Sečovlje. We ask him the question, why does salt flour matter to conservation? Andrej, thank you very much for joining us today. May I pass over the word to you now?
Yes, thank you, Lilia. Hello to everybody. I'm very pleased that we are together, especially because it was not so easy to arrange this meeting. I'm just on my way to one evaluation to Hoetaurn, so I just made a quick stop for an hour, and then I'm continuing to Austria. Yes, I will present you a very special case, a case where a commercial company, a mobile phone company, decided to invest money in the restoration of very valuable natural asset and also cultural heritage area. And I'd like to explain the reasons for doing that and focus on the benefits, both for the company and for nature and culture. At the end, I prepared a kind of a list of the questions which might and answers also to very particular questions that are related to this special governance type model. And also I'll try to summarize or to highlight what is actually the key point for understanding why such a model, which can be described as a public-private partnership, can work, and why and when does it work. So if there are similar cases elsewhere. So let me tell you in advance that I was the director of this Sečovlje Slovenia Nature Park for 15 years, but I no longer work there for the last 4 or 5 years. But so I don't have the recent information, and I apologize if some of the data, some of the diagrams that I'll be showing refer to the times when I was still there. So, but actually the situation has not changed much. The system still works. And if you agree, then I will start sharing my screen, and let's go to our presentation. Yeah, is this okay? Can you see me, Lilia? Is it okay?
Yes, we can see.
You see the presentation. Okay, so I'll try to show you what was the key product in this nature park, which made the management of this area, of course, as a primary goal, was the as always is conservation of biodiversity, natural values, and also cultural heritage. So why does one product bring an important contribution to the success of the management? So where we are Sečovlje Salina is located in the southwestern part of Slovenia, bordering Croatia. So it's about, I would say, it's about less than 3 hours drive from Klagenfurt. And it's just, as I said, it's on the way to Croatia. So the area was already from Roman times. Here it was the area for the production of salt. We call it a salina. This is a kind of more Mediterranean term. We use this term for the areas for salt production in the entire Mediterranean. So we also use this salina for this area. So going through just briefly through the history of the area, this salina was very, very important through historic times, especially in the, let's say, in the late Middle Ages and somewhere by the time when Austro-Hungarian Empire was still here, for one very special reason. And the reason is that the way how salt is produced here is not used anywhere else in the world. I mean, today, in historic times, it was used in some areas like the island of Pag in Croatia, and let's say up in some other salinas, somewhere up to reaching Trieste Bay. So the most important fact is that the salt produced here is very clear, it's very clean, it's very white. I don't know if you know, but all salt that is produced in the Mediterranean salinas is not white. It's brownish, it's grayish, it's yellowish, depends on the bottom layer, so of the mud. But only in this salina, they introduced a special method by growing an additional layer of algae and microorganisms and some chemical elements, but not artificial, of course. So a kind of a very thick layer which separates the water in which salt crystals are falling down to the ground from the bottom, from the mud. And this means that the salt was already in the times of the Serenissima, so the Venetian Republic, this salt was very white. And because the salt was white, all the kings and kingdoms and all the important persons in the wider part of Europe wanted to eat this white salt. So the salt was very high quality. I won't go into details about the salt production here, but by the year 2000, almost all Mediterranean salinas disappeared. I mean, traditional salinas, for one very simple reason, and the reason was that after the Second World War, the European market of salt was flooded by cheaply produced salt from North Africa, even from America, from Asia, from Cuba, and other areas. And the salt produced there was 3 times cheaper than the sea salt produced here. So the situation in the year 2000 was not good. I will show you on the next slide. So here you have the picture, the aerial photo. The northern part of this area is still active. Can you see the mouth? No.
Yes.
Yes. So this one is the area where the salt is still produced, and this part here is the area where the salt production was abandoned in 1967. And even today, there is no salt production in this southern part, only in the northern part. So this forms now the area which is called the Fontanide. And although this is a protected landscape only, this part is managed as almost a strict nature reserve. So this is what we introduced. It's actually no-go zone, with the exception of this small part here, where the old museum of salt making is still producing some salt for purposes of visitation and education. But all this area, you cannot walk here. So this is the biodiversity hotspot, and we didn't want at that time to allow people to go. So the birds and all the animals have all the paradise here. While this part is a salt production, but it's not an industrial salt, it's a handmade salt. And that's why it's also very important for biodiversity. So quickly, just to go through some 650 hectares, this part, the salt production part, is called Lera. The abandoned part, which is strict nature reserve, is called Fontanide. Very important point, 97% of the area is state-owned, so not many problems with landowners. No one lives here in the area, which is also very good for management. I mean, it's a benefit. It's easier to manage. And I don't want to go into the biodiversity list of important species, more than 300 birds, and then some very European endangered habitats like estuaries, mudflats, and so on. So the area was protected as a nature park by the government of Republic of Slovenia, as a cultural heritage monument. It was already before a Ramsar site, and it's also a Natura 2000 site. So what was the situation before the year 2002? So we realized that traditional salt production is a precondition for biodiversity preservation here, because all the species here, you know, in the course of the historical development for the last 700 years, those species really became dependent on the artificial, but not, I would say, half natural management of waters in this area. So those species really somehow became dependent on man's management. And the second important thing was that we realized that the production costs of the salt are too high to produce a salt which could be easily sold in the shops, in markets or so on, because you can buy a kilo of salt also in Austria. You can buy it for 0.3 euro. Our production costs were a minimum of 0.7, only production costs, so without packaging and distribution and so on. So we were, let's say, 2 or 3 times more expensive. So we needed to find a way how to sell the salt, I mean, the ordinary product, at a higher price. That was the key point, because if we would try to compete with the North African salt, we would definitely disappear, because we couldn't fight with the low prices. And the salt production by the year 2002 was almost, not really, but almost stopped, because the former managers, they didn't have all the needed, I would say, the initial financial and also logistical support to start the story again. So it was a kind of a paper park. You see, this is a picture of a dike. This is how it looked like. So the water was flooding all around. The bird nests were flooded. Fish were gone. Salt production was almost stopped. That was the situation in 2002. And then I was working for the IUCN then, and I received a call from the director of the mobile phone company, Mobitel, or now they are part of the telecom. And he said, would you be interested to manage to become the employee of the mobile phone company and to run a park in Slovenia? At that time, I was working in Switzerland with ICM, and I didn't hesitate, not a single. I said yes, and he said, "Won't you ask for the salary?" And said no, because I know it will be 2 times or 3 times lower, but it's a challenge. So so this is how we made a deal, and now the next year we introduced an innovative management agreement. So the land of this park is, and was at that time and still is, owned by the state. But the state gave a concession for salt making and concession for running a park to this mobile phone company. So it's important to know that all the properties, all the infrastructure, all the land still remains a state land. So it's not a private park. If you look at the governance models, this is so-called delegated management, when the state delegates management to a company, and it's not a private company to run this park. So the company got some rights. The state said that the company can share all the profits from tourism, visitation, and salt production, which was kind of mission impossible in the year 2002, because everything was ruined. Nobody was thinking that there could be some benefits from tourism or visitation or even salt production. And that's also important. They agreed that the mobile phone company can have an exclusive use of images from that park for their own promotion. That's very important. So this is how the mobile phones started to use. They didn't do that direct marketing. They didn't put the stickers or logos or, I don't know, any signs that they are investing in nature protection. They just had this right that they put the images of birds and fish and salters and salt making and beautiful scenery on all the products that they were selling, you know, like cell phones and all the packages when you subscribe to their company and so on. In return, the company had some obligations. The first one was that they should pay a kind of a concession annual fee, but it was, let's say, I'm now exaggerating, but it was €1. So €1 the company had to pay back to the state. So the state said, it's all yours because you have to invest into our infrastructure, the state-owned land and the infrastructure, and in return, you actually pay just €1 and no more. And what was also a mechanism how the state ensured that the management of the area will go along the conservation objective was the obligation that the area had to be managed according to the state-approved management plan. So why did then the Mobitel decided to invest in this salina? For 3 reasons. First, there were somehow direct benefits. They were thinking that they can get some incomes from selling the salt. Of course, not a mass production, but a kind of boutique, but high quality salt, so green product. They were thinking that there was very visionary, so 20 years ago, I must say now, they were thinking that they will get more visitors and that they will get some entrance fee. And they were also thinking that around, not inside, but around the park, that they would like to invest also in tourism, let's say a spa resort. So this was the vision for the direct benefit. And I briefly already explained, they were thinking that they can get some indirect benefits, like better corporate reputation as a socially and let's say environmentally responsible company. And as I said, that they can use the park as a means of promotion, not directly, but here, as you can see, the photo there, artistic, very high quality professional photo with a small logo of the mobile phone company. And this was put on the boxes of the cell phones and prepaid cards and so on. So this was the only promotion that they allowed to be used. Only this indirect promotion. And at the end, this was actually the best promotion. And then I must confess, there's the third component, and this was pure luck. The luck was that the mobile phone company was so rich at that time. We called the mobile phone company our rich mama. So our rich mama was really so rich that they could afford investing money in the park management. But it was, as I said, a pure luck, because the director of the company fell in love in this area. He didn't know it before. He could invest this money in operas or in sport or in whatever, but he said, no, I'll pay for that. So that I must say that we also had some good luck. And then things have changed. So the most important thing was not the 3 million euros that the mobile phone gave to the park in 3 years, so that we could restore all the infrastructure and salt making process. For me, the most important thing was that I was able to call the mobile phone company designers and marketing team, and they designed the product. So all you can see here is salt in very special package. I think you can buy it in Spar in Klagenfurt. I saw this too. So with some history, you see some beautiful. Instead of a plastic bag, you can get it in a cotton bag, and these nice bottles. And all the products we developed, not only salt but also chocolate with salt, and cosmetic program. The below you can see some peelings and all that. So, and all was based on natural product. And not only marketing, this means that they opened the path to the world market. So this salt is now selling across, I think, all the continents in 27 countries. At least this was when I left the company. I know that we were selling the salt in 27 countries. And Jamie Oliver, the famous TV cook, he was also using this salt in his restaurant. Okay, just briefly, this was the number of visitors until, when we started, there were 8,000 visitors, and in a couple of years, we reached 30,000. And when I left in 2017, there were more than 50,000 visitors per year, which means sixfold more than at the beginning. And of course, this also brought a lot of money. But what I see as the most important fact here is that if you look at the biodiversity indicators, so despite of reconstruction of the salt making process, we started when I started there as the director, I was the 16th person in the company. When I left, there were 96. So we employed 80 people. We started with 16 and we employed 80 more. But you see this diagram showing, despite the fact that we restored the salt making process, the number of most endangered birds increased. And this was probably because we really had this strict management. I was called the fascist because I didn't let people go into some parts of this area, because I realized that birds and other animals, they need some quiet space, and this quiet space was then really beneficial for them. So to conclude, Yes, it is an innovative financing source, but you should never sleep on that. So what do I mean by that? When we started, the mobile phone company directors said to us, we will give you 3 million, but if you don't make use of this money and become self-sufficient, let's say, in 3 years, we will kick you out. So we were really forced to run the park according to the conservation standards, but also to the business standards. So at the end of the year, when I was reporting to the mobile phone company, my report was equally important in terms of financial flows, let's say, and biodiversity indicators. So the mobile phone company director said to me, why didn't we get more birds? What was wrong? What do we need to improve? Not only how much money did you earn. And then this, of course, we learned about a process then I call a company thinking. That's okay. But of course, there were also some tensions, because some people in the mobile phone company thought that we should earn more money, so that we should, I don't know, introduce a mass tourism or build hotels or something, so to get more and more money. So no, we said there's the limit for nature, and we were actually all the time, our financial flows were at the end of the year we were somewhere above the zero, so a positive zero. And that was what the mobile phone company bosses said to me: we don't want you to make a profit, just be positive, nothing else. So we learned a lot about how to manage the park as a company, also in financial terms. But the most important thing that we learned is that it has to be very transparent. People, visitors, have to know for every euro that they pay with their tickets why this money will be invested, that it doesn't go to our pockets. Yes, of course, we were stimulated about this economic growth, but we never let non-profitable activities like conservation to be behind those, let's say, economic benefits. Market approach. I told you the story about the salt. Yes, it's true, but you cannot sell all your activities on market. So some are, let's say, also not profitable. We were lucky that the managers of the mobile phone company really like birds and plants. That's a pure luck. If the majority of the company managers, although they have lots of money, they are not interested. And the ownership of the company can change. And actually, some 5 years ago, the ownership changed a bit. And then I realized that my vision and their vision, we were not really on the same frequency anymore, because I disagreed with some of the new investments, which cannot happen if you're running a state-managed protected areas. I must confess that the government also provided some financial contribution to the management. And I think that although the mobile phone company could cover also those contributions from the state, I think it's important that the state is aware that they have to provide some money for protection of nature too. And being a company is an advantage for sure, but can also be an obstacle. For example, you cannot apply for certain funding mechanisms, or probably the biggest problem is when you invest as a company in the land which is state-owned, then you have problems in your accounting. I don't want to go into details, but it is probably it proved to be one of the most controversial and problematic things, because the mobile phone company invested their own money, but they didn't get nothing in advance, so that they have the problems in their financial books. I hope that this is clear. So was my presentation. I was a bit too long, but I hope it's still acceptable. Anyway, I have another meeting in 14 minutes, so but I would be pleased to respond if there are some questions.
Well, thank you very much, Andrej, for giving us those exclusive insights into the Secholier salt pans. It was very great to hear that this PPP model worked out so fine in this area.
Will ensure nature conservation in the 21st century. Be part of the new 4-semester part-time master programme. Carinthia University of Applied Sciences.